Hello everyone. This video is about a very important requirement in the Bible, in the Torah, that unfortunately many of my brothers and sisters who follow Christianity or who follow Judaism and those who claim to be Muslims also, they have forgotten this requirement. They have abandon this ancient tradition, this ancient ritual that is so specifically and so clearly mentioned in the Bible, in the Torah. It is detailed over there, way more than it is detailed in the Quran. Now, some of you might think that you're already doing this, especially those in the Islamic tradition. They think that they're doing this, but in fact, the way they are doing this is completely wrong. In fact, Satan, Lucifer, Akbar has corrupted this ancient ritual in Islam as well. It's a very important ritual. I'm going to show to you from the Bible what the name of this ritual is. And I'm going to show to you from the Bible how many times per day this ritual, by day I'm talking about the Yom, which is a 24-hour period, this ritual has to be performed. And how it is done. Is it like one time, 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, and each unit, I'm going to show you that each unit is basically what you are seeing here in this picture. We're going to learn together about the times of the day during which this ritual has to be done. And you're going to see that the times are mornings or dawn, or evenings or dusk, and also nights. You're also going to learn from the Bible the direction towards which you should be standing. And by the end of this video, you're going to learn something that at least for the past 1400 years, the devil, Lucifer, Akbar has kept a secret from the entire community of the believers, from the entire people of faith. And by that, I mean those who follow Christianity, those who follow Judaism, those who follow Islam. You should be performing this ritual every day in your churches, in your houses, in your synagogues, in your mosques, wherever you are. Bible gives us examples and snapshots of various biblical figures performing, men and women, this ritual. Every movement in that picture that I showed you, we're going to go over and you're going to see that. But first, let's look at some biblical Hebrew terms that you should know in order to understand those biblical verses. The reason why you should know these words is that these words, these terms have all been mistranslated. They have been translated incorrectly. And that's why when you look at any biblical translation right now, you're not going to understand what exactly it's talking about. The first word that I want to teach you is the word kum. Kum means standing up. When you stand up, that's kum. And by standing, I mean simply standing with your hands at sides. I'm not talking about crossing of hands or anything like that. It's just like a normal person when they're standing. Your hands are at your side. Very comfortable, very relaxed. The second term I want you to learn is kadad. The term kadad, what does that mean? It means to bow down, to bend the head. Imagine, I'm not a good painter, but imagine this is a human being. This is the waist. This line is the waist. This is the upper torso. This is the lower body and the legs. You see how when the head is kind of going down, so that is kadad. That is bending the head. That is bowing down. So remember this term, kadad. One more time. It's the act of lowering the body, often the head or upper torso to the ground. So that is kadad. The other term I would like for you to learn is barak. Barak means to kneel. It has two meanings. One of them is to bless. The other one is to kneel when it's referring to this ritual. But you might ask how there are so many different ways to kneel. You go to churches, they kneel one way. You go to mosques, they kneel another way. You go to synagogues, they kneel another way. And that's the beauty of the word of our Creator, the word of Yahweh and His books. They are clear. They specify that for us. So let me give you an example of the Bible from the book of Genesis, verse number 11 of chapter 24. It says, and he made his camels kneel down outside the city. Yabrek. It means he made his camels kneel down. It's the exact same word that we just talked about. Say yabrek. It's the exact same word from the same root. So he caused his camels to kneel down. Now let me show you several pictures of how camels kneel down when you are referring to them. Now this is a beautiful camel kneeling down, as you can see, right? You can see this here yourself. Here you can see another camel kneeling down. You see that? This camel is kneeling down as well. Another camel again, you see kneeling down. So another picture of another camel again. And when we get to biblical verses, I'm going to show you that the Bible, the Word of God, our Creator Yahweh, uses the exact same words for prayer as well. The exact same yabrek. Okay, we'll talk about that. Now the other word you should learn is the word kara. The word kara, that has various meanings that they have used here. However, the actual meaning that it comes from is the word crouch. Even when a lion crouching to hunt, that's what the word kara means. Here's a better definition. It portrays a decisive bending of the body, basically knees folding. So this knees folding into your belly. We're going to look at pictures of that. So in this picture, this lion is doing the action of the word kara. You see, it's just kind of kneeling and crouching. That's crouching, waiting for the prey. This is another lion crouching. Another lion crouching here, and another lion crouching here. Now, this is a prophecy about Judah, but what does it say? It says he, basically talking about Judah. It says Judah is a lion. It's a whelp of a lion. He crouches. He lies down as a lion. What is the word for crouch that he uses? Is kara. He basically crouches. He crouches. He lies down as lion. I showed you those pictures. You see how that is the action of the word kara. Now in the book of Samuel, verse 19 of chapter 4, it talks about this biblical figure and talks about her and says, she crouched. She crouched and gave birth. Again, Yahweh, our Creator, is giving us snapshots so we know what he's talking about when he's using this vatikra, when using that word, that term, right? So she crouched and gave birth. And I'm going to show you some pictures. So in the old days, they didn't have hospitals, they didn't have all those pain medications. So this is what women used to do. And this is why there's some movements to the natural birth and all those things. They're teaching you how you have to crouch and give birth. Look, that verse is talking the kara. This is the movement of kara. Again, these are the movements of kara. You see how the lady in the picture is crouching to push the baby out and give birth naturally. So that's what it's talking about. Now, in the story of Gideon, Yahweh tells him to set apart whoever laps with his tongue from the water, also everyone who crouches on his knees to drink like a dog, basically, laps like that, goes over there and tries to use this. And again, the word that it uses is the word yikra. You remember the line I showed you how this picture, this is what it's talking about again. And then in the next verse, it tells us that the number of people who actually used their hands to eat was only about 300 people. But the rest of the people, they all, what did they do? They crouched. They crouched like that picture of the line I showed you, and they drank water that way. And this is another picture again. You see these people, what are they doing? They are crouching to laps the water. They're crouching as opposed to using their hands to eat. So that's what he's talking about. Again, people crouching, and this man is using his hand. Now the last term that I want you to learn is the word shakha. The word shakha. Shakha means to prostrate. It means prostration. When you put your face down, it's that movement that you go down and your face goes down. That's prostration. You could go down, but you could not put your face down. That would not be prostration. When you put your face down on the ground, that's prostration. So that's the word shakha. Okay, so let's look at this together. The first two, this person is, what is it doing? Is kom. It's a standing. Now, this person, what is it doing? It is kadad. It's bowing down. It's kadad. At this point, what is this person is doing? This person is kneeling and starting to crouch. So this kneeling and starting to crouch. And at this point, this person has completed prostration. I'm going to show you examples from Bible, from the Torah, for all these movements. By the end of this video, one of the biggest secrets that Lucifer, devil, Akbar has kept from you, my brothers who follow Christianity, my sisters who follow Judaism, brothers and sisters who follow Islam, you have all been doing this wrong for the past 1400 years. Now, book of Ruth, it talks about an instance, talks about when Ruth says she fell on her face, vatishtahu. Here they have translated as she bowed down. That is incorrect. She tishtahu, basically prostrated. She prostrated arda, to the ground. Basically, she put her face on the ground. She mentioned it. She fell on her face, not on her chin, not on her ears, on her face, and put her face on the ground prostrated. And more importantly, and said, Vatomer, said, she started talking. That tells you that the mouth is completely free to talk. It's by the face, we're talking about the forehead and the nose that is on the ground, and your mouth, you can easily and freely move your mouth and talk. So you see, Bible, Torah is teaching us how we should do the prostration and which part of our face should be on the ground. Now, in another verse, says she stood up, batakam, says she arose. She stood up, batishtachu apayim arda, that prostrated her face to the earth, just as I mentioned. And again, and said, started talking. You see how it's explaining and making it very clear that she stood up, and then from that position of standing up, she came down, as you can see in this picture, and prostrated, putting her face, as you can see again in this picture, to the ground. And you see the mouth is free to do the talking. I started talking because your mouth is not on the ground. Another instance, very quickly, says he came to the king, Vayishtahu, he prostrated himself on, how did he prostrate? On his face, arda, again the same way, to the ground. Again, Vayishtahu, prostrated, Lamelech, before the king, with his face to the ground, just as I showed you in the picture. In the book of Isaiah, actually emphasizes that part. It says, with their faces, apayim eretz, with their faces to the earth, to the ground, they shall prostrate, not bow down, they shall prostrate to you. Remember, now I share you the verse about Joseph, Prophet Joseph, in the Bible. What does it say? Joseph's dream is that I saw the sun and the moon and 11 stars mishtahavim li. It means they were prostrating for me, prostrating to me. They have again translated as bowing down, right? Whereas the actual means I saw them prostrating to me. And then you see the exact same verse in the Quran. It says, إِنِّي رَأَيْتُ أَحَدَ عَشَرَ كَوْكَبًا وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ, sun and the moon, رَأَيْتَهُمْ لِي, what? Sajidin. So mishtahavim is literally the same verse, has been translated to Arabic 1400 years ago. It's the same one. Mishtahavim is what? Sajidin. So Allah, Yahweh, our creator, the creator of the heavens and the earth, is teaching us that mishtahavim means sajidin, prostrating. And then Bible translates this verse for us, because there are some people that claim that prostration is not physical, it's a spiritual and all kinds of things. But Prophet Jacob, Prophet Yaqub translate this verse for us. Jacob at this point tells Joseph, shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to you, lehishtahawut, to prostrate before you, that to the ground. So it's basically translating, after Joseph tells him his dream, this is Jacob translating that dream. It's like, according to this dream that you saw, what this means is that your mother, your brothers, and I, at someday we're going to come to you and prostrate to you to the ground. It's not talking about submission. It's not talking about anything spiritual. It's talking about a physical prostration to the ground. That's what it's talking about. It's 100% proof of physical prostration, as I showed you in that picture. Basically, when the people saw the cloud of Yahweh, what did they do? They stood up. All the people stood up. And then what did they do? Vahishtahawu, they prostrated. Here they have translated as they worshipped. They prostrated, each man at the door of his tent. Again, in another instant, Book of Samuel, chapter 119, there's another biblical figure. It says she rose up early, stood up, Vayaskimu, stood up early, Beboker, in dawn. It's not the morning, it's actually dawn, during dawn. It's before the first light, before sunrise. It's dawn. And what did he do? What did she do before dawn? Prostrated. Yishtahavu, prostrated before Yahweh. And then after that, she started moving. So this is a ritual that you have to do it beboker. What is the boker? During dawn. So already we have one of the time. Before she's getting out of the house, before she's hitting the road, what does she do? She wakes up, stands up, and prostrate, as I showed you here. And then we have this very curious verse in the book of Psalm. Chapter 95, verse 6 of the book of Psalm, David says, Bo nishtahave va nikra'ah. Come, let us prostrate. Again, worship is wrong. Remember, let us prostrate and crouch. You remember kara that we talked about, right? This is kara. Let us prostrate and crouch. And then it says, Nibreka lipne Yahweh. Let us kneel before Yahweh. So this is very interesting, because if you remember the picture I showed you, kneeling comes before crouching, right? So first it's kneeling, then you crouch, and then what do? You prostrate. So kneeling, crouching, prostrating. However, Prophet David is reversing the order. It says, let's prostrate first, then let's prostrate and crouch. Let's kneel together. So what is David talking about? This is very curious. This is mysterious. In fact, I tell you, the Quran does the exact same thing. So by the time I'm done with this video, you're going to understand that verse very clearly. Now, Psalm 138 has another curious thing. It says, Eshtahawe el hekel katseka. It says, I will prostrate towards your holy temple. So he's telling you that this ritual has a direction. What is the direction of it? Yahweh's holy temple, wherever that is. Here, David is talking about Yahweh's holy temple, and that his prostrations are towards that temple. But it's not only prostration, that's number one. That's only one thing. Then after that it says va'odeh. It says, and I will glorify, I will praise, I will give thanks to your name for your loving kindness and for your truth. So there's two things here. Prostration towards the holy temple, and also that prostration, that rituals also followed with something that is called praising, glorification. We're going to come back to this. You're going to understand this very well. Now, Psalm 5 says the same things. I will come into your house. I will come inside your house, house of Yahweh. Eshtahabe, I will prostrate, again, wrong translation. I will prostrate towards your holy temple. Again, shows the direction is towards Yahweh's house, God's house. It also teaches us that whenever you go to the house of Yahweh, regardless of where that is, and we're going to get to it because Bible again teaches us where that is, you have to prostrate towards the temple. Now, Psalm 26 teaches us another thing. David says, my foot stands amadeh. This is another word that is used actually, but it's not as much. Amadeh stands in an even, bemishor, in an even place in the congregation. And then abarek, I will bless Yahweh. So what is it telling? This is the community salah, community prayer. When they're getting together, it says basically you have to stand on a flat surface, on a level surface. You don't want to stand on a hill or anything like that. David is teaching that as a person leading the community ritual prayer, community salah, you have to stand on an even surface. So 2 Chronicles 6:13 talks about Prophet Solomon, and when he is actually performing this daily ritual. It says, for he, Solomon, made a platform of bronze and had set it in the midst of the court, 5 cubits long, 5 cubits wide, and 3 cubits high. And he stood on it. So remember, vayamud alay. So he stood on it. And then what he did, so what he's starting, remember that picture that I showed you, we're going to go over it. He stood on it. Now it goes to the next one of the movement after that. It says, vayibrak al-berka. It says, and he knelt down on his knees. This is the exact same word that I showed you at the beginning of this video about camels kneeling. Do you remember? I showed you the pictures of those camels. And I told you there's another word. This is used actually for daily ritual for Salah. So this is the exact same word, vayibrak. Okay? He knelt on his knees before all the assembly of Israel, all the Israelites who had gathered there. And then what did he do next? He spread out his hands towards heaven. So this is very interesting. So 3 parts. First, what did he do? He stood on that platform, right? And then he knelt down. How did he kneel down? Just like those camels. I showed you those words, right? And then the third thing that he did was that he spread out his hands towards heaven. Now let's look at picture one more time. What is this guy? What is this person doing? He's standing up. So Solomon stands up. The next one that he's talking about is this part. So he's kneeling down right now here. So this is the kneeling down part. And the last part that he's talking about, if you look at this picture, you can see that the hands are upward. So the direction of the hands are towards heaven. So he's talking about this process. Does not specifically mention kadat part, does not specifically mention kara part, does not specifically mention prostration. But if you know this process, then you know where he is in that process. So it starts from here and ends here. Okay, now there's another verse that clarifies this for us and actually tells more about this. The exact same picture is from another angle Bible looks at. Let's look at that other verse. Now 1 Kings 8:54 completely clarifies Solomon's kneeling, just so you know. And so it was when Solomon had finished praying to Yahweh that he, at this point, he stood up, he stood up from before the altar. So where is he? He's in the house of Yahweh in front of the altar. If you're familiar with the plan, the book of Ezekiel, if you're familiar with Petra, you know that also Petra is another one. You see there's a house and there's an altar in front of it. So Solomon is in front of that altar in that new house of the Lord, house of Yahweh that he built under the direction of his father, right? In Jerusalem. That did not exist up until then. This is a new house. So he stood from that position that he was in. What position was it? It explains that for us. From mikroah. It means from, they have translated kneeling. It doesn't mean kneeling. It means from crouching. Of course, it does have the kneeling part in it as well. But to be accurate, it's crouching. So basically, he's saying that Solomon stood up after finishing his prayer, his supplication that he was making to Yahweh. And after his prayer and it was finished, he stood up from that position in which he was saying his prayer, his supplication. What was that position that he was in while he was praying? He was mikroah. He was crouching. He stood up from crouching on his knees and with his hands spread up to heaven. So this was his position. Bible, Torah is explaining, is giving us the exact detail of Solomon in that second. What was that position? He was crouching on his knees with his hands towards heaven, which is exactly which position? It's this position that we talked about, right? Look, what is he doing? He's crouching on his knees and look at his hands. His hands are towards heaven. Okay, I cleaned it up for you. Again, I'm hoping that you can see. Here the hand is towards heaven. It means the palm of your hand is upward. So that is the position Solomon was in while he was praying and supplicating to the Lord, which is it's a position of respect, prostration, head is there. But look, the mouth is free to talk and pray loudly. So while he's doing this, he's also praying. Now let's look at a very clear example of community salah in the Bible, community ritual prayer. This is 2 Chronicles 29:26. So the first thing that happens is Vayamdu, they stood, all the Levites stood up. This is basically Kamu, right? They stood up with the instruments of David and the priests with the trumpets. So everybody stands up. The beginning of the community salah at this point. So the Levites and the priests stand up with their trumpets and musical instrument. What happens next? The leader of the community, the leader of the Salah, which at this point is Hizkiyahu or Hezekiah. Hizkiyahu commands to offer the burnt offering on the altar at the house of Yahweh. Which altar? This is the same altar where Solomon was standing before it and performing the Salah, the ritual prayer. So as soon as the burnt offering starts, then the song of Yahweh also starts with the trumpets, and with the instruments of music. So remember, you have the burnt offering. This is the daily burnt offerings that happens at 2 times. If you are familiar with the Bible, with the Torah, you know that it used to happen twice in a day. Early in the morning, Beboker during dawn, and in the evening during dusk. People mostly make the mistake that the burnt offering is only about burnt offering. No, it's actually always paired with this ritual prayer, and that's what the Bible is telling us. That's what Hezekiah or Hizkiyahu is demonstrating for us at this point. So at the same time that the burnt offering is starting, what happens? The song of Yahweh, the poem of Yahweh, the word of Yahweh starts. They start reciting the recitation of the poem, the song of Yahweh also starts. They start reciting. We're going to come back to this a lot more again. So at this point, you have the burnt offering happening. You have recitation of the poetry of the word of God. So at this point, what happens? The entire assembly is standing, right? I told you, everybody stood up. So the entire assembly is standing. Now, what happens next? So all the assembly prostrated, mishtahavim, prostrated. Here again, they have translated as worshipped. Prostrate. So entire assembly does a prostration, just in the picture that I showed you. And this is the end of the first unit of Salah. I know it just mentions prostration, but remember, in order for the entire assembly to get that prostration, they have to bow down, they have to kneel, crouch, and then prostrate. So this is the end of the first unit of Salah or daily rituals. And then they prostrated, and the singers sang, and the trumpets sounded. All of this ritual, all of the Salah at this time is guided by this musical instrument. How basically the recitation starts when you have to start bowing and prostrating. Then the musical instruments guide that movement, and then they guide that movement to stand up as well. Then the verse teaches us, it says, all this continued until the burnt offering was finished. So everyone prostrated. So this continued, and then they stood up again until the burnt offering was finished. So, and then the next verse becomes even more interesting. It says, and when they had finished the offering, so when they had finished, so remember, they already stood up, they already did one prostration, one unit of Salah. Now, they have already stood up again. So when they had finished, now the burnt offering, this is towards the end of the burnt offering. Everyone is standing up until the burnt offering finishes. The song of Yahweh, the poetry, the recitation is going on. And then at this point, kareu, again, they do the same. This time they use the word kareu. They crouched. It says bow. They say crouched the king. So the king is leading the Salah. Crouched the king and all who were present with him, and vayishtahavu, and they prostrate. Again, wrong translation, worship, prostrated. So here actually for the second unit it gives us more. Obviously they were standing, otherwise they could not have crouched and prostrated, right? So this is what's happening. Hezekiah is leading the prayer. Imagine this is Hezekiah. Everybody stand, Hezekiah stands, and burnt offering starts. The recitation of the poetry, of the poem, of the word of God, which is very poetic, starts at the same time. And burnt offering is going. They are paired together. What does Hezekiah, for during the first unit, do? Does one of this. does the prostration. So it tells us about the prostration, right? And all of this movement in terms of the timing is guided by musical instrument, by the Levites and the priests. Now Hezekiah, so this is the number one. This is times one. It means the first unit of the prayer. After this, Hezekiah stands up again. Now we have the second unit. And in the second unit, the verse tells us, as the burnt offering finishes, they all stand, they do the recitation. And then as soon as the burnt offering is finished, what does Hezekiah do? Hezekiah does the second unit. It means here it has actually the verse talks about crouches and does the prostration again. So this is the second unit. So this happens twice. They call it 2 rak'ah or 2 standing. You can call it 2 standing, or you can call it 2 kneeling, or you can call it 2 crouching, or you can call it 2 prostration. So does 2 of this, and these 2 happen at the exact same time that the burnt offering is going on, and they finish by the time the burnt offering is finished. That's what those verses are teaching us. So 2 units, or 2 rak'ah, or 2 standing, or 2 kneeling, or 2 crouching, or 2 prostration. But it gets even more interesting. Do you remember in the Psalm of David I showed you, it said that I prostrate and then I give thanks and do glorification as well. I told you there are 2 parts. One is the Salah, the other one is giving thanks and glorification and praise. Let's look at the next part. Next verse says, moreover, commanded Hezekiah, Hezekiah, the king, and the leaders, the Levites, to do what? To sing praise to Yahweh with the words of David and Asaph the seer. So the 2 units at this point of Salah, or the ritual prayer, has already finished. Right? Now Hezekiah commands the Levites to sing praises, to glorify Yahweh. How? With what kind of a quality? With the words of David and Asaph the seer. So what do? They sing praises. So everybody, including the kings, the princes, the community that has gathered inside the house of Yahweh in front of his altar, they sing praises together with gladness, with joy. They sing praises using the Psalms of David. They praise, they glorify the name of Yahweh, our Creator, with gladness and joy. And at the end of it, what do? Vayikedu, it means they bowed their heads towards the ground, vayishtahavu, and prostrated. So this is the 3rd time they do that. But this is not the Salah, this is different. It's not the recitation of the word of Torah, of the word of God. This is singing songs of joy in accordance to Psalms of David. And at the end of that, what do they do again? They bow down their heads and they prostrate again. So let's go back to that picture. So what is happening here? We talked about the first unit of the Salah, or daily ritual prayer, the second unit. During these 2 units, what happens? During these 2, you recite, there's a recitation of the poetry of the word of God that you recite. And we're going to come back to and explain more about this. You're going to see in another chapter of the book of Ezra, it specifies what you have to do during these 2. Okay? So we'll get to that. And then after this is over, your Salah, your daily ritual is over, it's time for glorification and praise. So what do? All the community in the community Salah, or if you're doing it individual, if you're doing it in a church, in a synagogue, in a mosque, you have to stand up. You have to stand up, you have to sing the songs of Yahweh, you have to glorify Him, praise Him, praise His holy name with joy and happiness. And then at the end of that, you do a 3rd bowing, kneeling, crouching, and prostration. And that would be the 3rd time. There's no sitting. There's nowhere in here that you have to sit, right? Even Solomon, in the verse that I mentioned about Solomon taught us that at the end of it, at the end of his prayer and supplication, what did he do? He just stood up. He did not sit down on his bottom to do anything, to do chit chat or anything. He stood up. That's what he did. So this habit, this idea of people, unfortunately, you see in those who follow the Islamic tradition, is that they sit down and they shake hands. That's nowhere in the Bible, nowhere in the Quran. That's a tahrif. That's an innovation. That's a corruption of this practice. Now, Samuel 1:20-41 gives us an example of how to perform an individual salah, individual ritual prayer. It says, when the boy had gone, then Prophet David, he stood up towards Negev, towards the south. So what does David do? David stands up and has a direction. Remember, we talked about Psalms that David was saying, I stand towards your holy temple, towards your house, wherever that is. Now David at this point is standing up, and his direction is towards Negev. This is really important. Remember, the Temple of Solomon, the name is on it, was built by who? By Solomon. Solomon is David's son. So at this point, Solomon is not even born. So the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem did not exist at this point. And also, the tent in Shiloh is actually towards the north. It's towards the north, it's not towards the south. But David at this point is facing Negev. Negev is a desert in the south of Israel. Is facing the south towards the desert of Negev. Is there a house of the Lord in Negev, in the south, that David is facing towards? And the answer to that is Petra, Jordan. Petra, Jordan. I have several videos on that. I'll put them in the link and you're going to see that. So he's facing towards Petra, Jordan at this point. And what did he do? So he stands up, just like I showed you to those pictures, and then fell on his face to the ground. So stood up, fell on his face towards the ground, vayishtahu, and prostrated, again, not bow down, and prostrated. How many times? 3 times. Now you remember this, right? We talked about the first time with Hezekiah and the second time, and then after that Hezekiah commanded all the Levites to sing praises and do glorification with happiness, Psalms of David, and then it did the last time 3 times together, right? How many times did we talk about? 3 times. Now in this verse, how many times did David do the prostration? 3 times. So basically David did 3 of these movements. Stood up, first time, second time, recited the Torah, and then the third time was glorification, and then did the final prostration 3 times. So it's 2 parts. One part is the Salah, which is 2 units, and one part, which is the second part, is a glorification, which is only 1 unit. One more time. Salah, the ritual daily prayer, is 2 units. 2 units of those movements that I showed to you in that picture, right? But there's another thing that's not part of the Salah, it's separate. It's thanksgiving, glorification, it's praise. And this is just 1 unit. After your Salah is over, you stand up, you do that with happiness and glorify the name of Yahweh, your creator, and that is only 1 unit. So altogether, that's why David did 3 units. Now, do you remember there was a psalm that I told you, why is this the opposite direction? Let's get back to it, and you are going to understand that very well right now. Now, in that psalm, it says, let us prostrate. It starts with this, and crouch. Let us prostrate and crouch. And then it says, let us kneel. which is number 3. But the problem is that you can't prostrate and go backward and then kneel. That doesn't make sense, right? It's not in order. But something should ring a bell in our minds talking about 3. So what is talking about? Let me show it to you. When it says, let us prostrate, it's talking about what? It's talking about the prostration in the first rak'ah. Quran does the exact same thing as well. So that is the first unit of the salah. Let us prostrate and crouch. Now when it's talking about crouch, it's talking about this is a doubly. This is a salah is a doubly. Let us prostrate and crouch. This is for the second unit. So you start the salah, you stand, you go to the first prostration, and you stand up, you do the second one, you do the crouching, and then the prostration, and then it says, let us kneel. It separates itself. This is no longer salah. This is the first 2, and now this is the glorification. This is the third part. This is the glorification part, and in the glorification part, what is it pointing to? It's pointing only to the kneeling. It says, let us kneel. Our Creator, Yahweh, through the mouth of David, is teaching us that you have to perform your salah that way. It's basically, it has to be first 2 units, and the third one is not part of the salah, is a glorification and praise, and you end it with, again, the same thing, basically kneeling, crouching, and prostrating, and then towards the end, you can put your hands up just like Solomon did, and you can also talk and do your supplication as well if you want to. So hopefully now you understand Psalm 95 verse 6 very clearly, where it says, let us nishtahave, let us prostrate, vanikra'a, and crouch. Then this is salah is over. At this point, salah or your ritual prayer is over. These are the 2 units. 2 initial units. At this point, it is over. Then you do actually what? Glorification. And during that glorification, as soon as your glorification is done, nibreka, let us kneel. Lipne Yahweh Osenu. Okay? Now, this is another example of individual salah, individual ritual. Teaches you the exact same thing. This is from the book of Daniel. When you don't have any community, when you are amongst the disbelievers in exile. It says, and Daniel, when he knew that that order was signed, so they signed an order, they say, whoever worships anyone but the king, they're going to kill him, right? So what he did, he actually went home, and with windows open in his upper room, again, I want you to pay attention. The book of Daniel gives us the direction. What is the direction here? It says towards Jerusalem. Why is that? But we just talked about David. Before Jerusalem, the temple in Jerusalem was built, David was facing Negev, south, towards Petra. Why is Daniel facing Jerusalem? That's a dilemma. This is a direction of prayer has changed from Negev south, from Petra towards Jerusalem. What happened? Prophet Solomon happened. Solomon built the temple of Solomon and dedicated it as the house of Yahweh. And Yahweh commanded all the Israelites at this point to pray, to perform the Salah towards Jerusalem. That's why Daniel, who is years after Prophet David, many years after Prophet David, at this point, he's facing towards Jerusalem, even though the house of God in Jerusalem is in ruins. It doesn't even exist anymore. In that also, there is a lesson that even though Petra is in ruins, even though it was destroyed by Umayyad Muslims, even though all those calamities happened, you still have to face that direction of prayer. That's what Daniel is teaching us in this verse. So he's going it towards Jerusalem at this point. And how many times per day? It says three times in a day. What about the night? That is the key. You have to remember, this is not the day like the day we count in English. It's a 24-hour. This is day and night, 24-hour period. In Hebrew and Arabic, they call it yom. Yom in a 20. So three times in a 24-hour period. Morning, evenings, and nights. That's why it is morning, evenings, and nights. So what did he do during these three times? He barek al berkohi. He knelt down on his knees. And then it tells us the name of what he did. It says Salah. Did Salah. That's the meaning of it. Salah, it means he did Salah. That's why you have this name of Salah. Don't be mad, my Jewish brothers, my Christian brothers. Don't be mad. Don't be upset when you hear that word. That word comes directly from the book of Daniel. Salah. It means he performed Salah. Salah. Salah is the root of it. Performed Salah. So that's the first two units that we talked about, 1 and 2. And the third time, what is this? Gave thanks. Odeh. It means he gave thanks. He glorified. Praised. Just like we discussed, just like Hezekiah did, just like David did. So basically, 3 times per day, dawn, dusk, night, and each time you start with 2 units of Salah, Salah, you do your Salah, and then the last time you stand up, you praise, glorify, worship, and at the end of it, you do a third kneeling, crouching, and prostrating. And what is the direction? The direction at the time of Daniel was towards Jerusalem. At the time of David was towards Petra, Jordan. Okay? And then it was turned towards Jerusalem at the time of Prophet Solomon. So Daniel was many years after Prophet Solomon, so he's facing Jerusalem. Let me show you the word Salah so you can actually see that I'm not making this up. This is the word that is used for Salah. This is the root of it. The name of it is Salah, which is the Salah. That's the Salah. Salah that you hear in the Quran, that has come from the book of Daniel. That's the name of this practice that Daniel did, that David did, that Hezekiah did, that Solomon did, that all these biblical characters did. That's the exact, all of them did. Then how did you forget? How come you don't do it in your churches, synagogues, and mosques? How come we don't do it? It's because Satan, Lucifer, Akbar, the devil, has deceived us and has corrupted this practice over the centuries. So we also talked about Yom, and it's not the day like we say in English, day and night. This includes the day and night. So let's look at another example of community salah, community ritual prayer that was led by Prophet Ezra. But this is after the destruction of the temple, so they no longer had the musicians, the Levites, the priests, and all that infrastructure which they used to have at the time of Hezekiah or at the time of David and the time of Solomon. So again, Bible teaches the believers that even though the temple might be in ruins, even though those things might not exist, you still are required to perform the community salah if you actually do have a community of true believers. But if you don't have it, like at the time of Daniel, you have to do it individually. So let's look at it together. So verse number 5 of chapter 8 tells us about Ezra, again, standing in front of the people, just like Solomon was. He's also standing in a platform above all people, right? And what does he do? He opens the Torah. All the people, all the community that had gathered in that place, they stand up. So Ezra is standing up. As soon as he opens the Torah, to start the recitation. So all the community, all those people behind him, because Ezra, remember, is leading the Salah, leading the prayer, everyone behind him also stands up. So brought Ezra the priest the Torah. Here they have translated as the law. That has nothing to do with that. It says HaTorah, the Torah. So before the assembly of men and women and all with understand, everyone who could understand and everyone who could hear. What day was this? Beyom had, this was the first day of the 7th month. What is the 7th month? Seventh month is the month of Tishrei. Is the month of Tishrei. Is the first month of fall. In the Bible, I don't remember, I'm not talking about the current calendars or anything. In the Bible, the 7th month of the Bible is the month of Tishrei, and it's the 7th month, is the first month of fall. It's the first month of fall. Start around September 21, September 23rd, up to October 21, 23rd. Weather is perfect, climate is perfect. And remember, first day is the fall equinox. In fall equinox, what happens? The length of day and the length of night are the exact same. So basically, this is the first day of the of the 7th month. So in this day, the length of day and the length of night are equal. You have the fall equinox. It's the most important month of the year in the Bible and in the Quran. This is the month when the book of Torah was revealed, and in the Quran, it's the month when the book of Quran was revealed. So in original Islamic calendar, I'm not having nothing to do with this current Islamic calendar. That has nothing to do with the Quran. In original Islamic calendar, this is the 7th month of the year, is the month of Ramadan. I have several videos, and I will put the links down in the description. You can see that. So it's the exact same month when the Torah and the Quran were revealed. Now, Book of Nehemiah chapter 8 verse 6 actually gives us another picture, another angle of the exact same event from the narrations of Nehemiah. It says, and blessed Ezra Yahweh. So Ezra blesses Yahweh, the great God, and all the people said, Amen. And this is after the recitation of the Torah while standing is coming to the end. So Ezra is reciting the Torah, sing-songing the Torah. I'm talking about the original Torah. So he's sing-songing it. So they all say Amen while lifting their hands up. And then, Vayik'edu vayishtahavu Yahweh apayim artah. So, and then they bowed their heads down and prostrated, not worshipped again. And they bowed and prostrated for Yahweh. How? With their faces to the ground. With their faces to the ground. At the end of the Salah, at the end of the community Salah and prayer. So again, Ezra stands up, opens up the Torah, the entire community stands up behind him. Ezra is leading the Salah. Ezra recites the Torah, and at the end of the recitation, what happens in the first unit of it is that again, they do bow, kneel, crouch, prostration, and stand up. Another recitation episode, then another bow, kneel, crouch, and prostration. But here's giving us only an episode of it. And how is the prostration? Again, with your face on the earth. Not your chin, not your mouth, not your ear. Your face, it means forehead and your nose. While you can't even talk, okay? Now, Nehemiah, verse number 3 of chapter 9 actually tells us even more. It says, Vayakumu, they stood up. All of them, all the community stood up in their place. And what did they do? Vayikre'u. It means they recited. Vayikre'u. They recited Besefer from the book. Which book? The book of the Torah. Here they have translated law again. So that's what you do. So remember in the story of Hezekiah, it called the book of the Torah as Sher Yehovah. It means poetry, poem of Yehovah. That tells me when I listen to that, when I hear this, that Torah that Ezra had is very poetic. The current Torah is very poetic as well, but it must have been even more poetic. Whatever version that they had was very poetic back then. So he basically, everyone stands up and they recite the yikra'u. The same word in Arabic is yaqra'u or qara'u. So they recite from the book of the Torah. How long did this last? For a fourth of the day. A quarter of a day. By day, we are talking about what? Hayyom. We are talking about a 24-hour period, right? We talked about this, a 24-hour period, not just a day and night. It's 20 by a fourth of a day. That means they spent about 6 hours during the first day of the 7th month of Tishrei or month of Ramadan in Salah. 6 hours of that day was spent in Salah. Remember, it's a fall equinox, so you have equal time of length of day and equal length of night. It means you have 12 hours daytime, 12 hours nighttime. So that 6 hours of that day was spent in performing Salah. What does it mean? It means reciting and then prostrating. So they also did something else. So for another quarter of the day, for another 6 hours, another quarter of the day, they did something else. They did mitwadim. Now here they have translated again by mistake, they have translated completely wrong. They confessed. That's not it. This is the exact same word that we have been translating so far. And this translator has been translating it as glorification, as praise, as giving thanks. But suddenly here it changes to confess. Confess to what? So for 6 hours, the next 6 hours, they do the second part. This is not the Salah. After Salah is over, you have to do glorification, thanksgiving, just like Hezekiah did, just like David said, just like Daniel did. So Salah is always followed by this episode, by this time, by this period of glorification, giving thanks and praising Yahweh, our creator. And that's what they did. So they spent another 6 hours, altogether 12 hours in glorification and praise. And it says, Umishtahavim, and they prostrate again. And they prostrate after that. What does this teach us? So my brothers and sisters who believe Torah or Bible is not accurate, Bible is very accurate. And like every other book, of course, there are some intervention by some human beings that who are writing it, and they might just, but for the most part, it's extremely accurate. Just like the Quran, for the most part, is very accurate, but nothing is perfect, right? So the reason why the first day of equinox, the first day of fall equinox is chosen is to give us, to make sure that we know that the length of day and the length of night are the same. We are talking about a 6 hour day, 6 hour night. So a quarter of 24 hours gives us 6 hours. So they spent 6 hours during this day in Salah, and they spent 6 hours in glorification and signing. Why? Because this is a day, this is a month where they have to avoid talking, avoid lying, avoid accusations, avoid talking to each other. Rather focus on the Lord and praying and glorifying. That's what Ramadan is. That's nothing to do with eating and drinking. It is with focusing on the words of Yahweh, on the books of Yahweh, our Creator, and understanding His word and glorifying Him and His actions and His kindness and His grace to all of us. That's why you see they're not talking to each other. They're standing up and basically performing Salah and glorifying the Lord the entire day. Verse number 5 of chapter 9, the book of Nehemiah, gives us something even more interesting. I'm going to very quickly tell you that people get really sad because of all the sins they had committed. The Israelites back then at that time, in that day, they become very sad. They start crying. And then the Levites, they command them that don't be sad. You don't need to be sad. Just stand up. Kumu, stand up. Bareku et Yahovah. Stand up and bless Yahweh your God, Elohekum. So be happy in Yahweh. God doesn't want you to be mourning. Yahweh, our Creator, wants us to be happy. Bless Him, bless His holy name, rejoice in Him. Just like David had commanded in the Psalm that when you get to that portion of giving thanks and glorifying and praising, you have to do that with happiness and with joy. Ezekiel 46.2 gives us some more tradition as to the princes and kings of the Israelites that actually had to come to the temple to perform Salah over there, to perform that daily ritual. So the prince had to come to the vestibule of the gateway from outside. I'm going to go through this very fast. And what they had to do actually describes it. And they had to stand by the post, to stand over there. And just like Hezekiah did it, while the priests were offering burnt offerings and peace offering, the priest, just like the example that I showed you during Hezekiah, I'm not going to spend too much time on it because we went over it. Just so as priest is standing over there, the burnt offering is being offered in the mornings and in the evenings. So the princes or the kings, they had to come over there, stand at the vestibule, stand while the burnt offering is going. They had to do the Salah and the glorification. So they had to do Vahishtahawa. But the worship is wrong, right? He shall prostrate. Basically, they have to, so the prince has to do, or the king, they have to do the prostration at the threshold 2 times per day, mornings, evenings, in certain days. And the next verse teaches us that it's not only the prince. When the prince or the king comes, all the people have to gather behind him as well. So this becomes a community salah, community ritual prayer. And likewise, shall prostrate, not worship, but shall prostrate the people of the land at the entrance to the gateway on certain days. What days? Shabbat days, and also on the beginning of each month. Here they have translated as a new moon. It has nothing to do with this chodesh, b'chodeshim. Chodesh, the moon, the word for yom in Hebrew is completely different word. This is chodesh, means the beginning of each month. If you look at most of the majority of the translations, they have translated as the new moon. It has nothing to do with the moon, new moon, full moon, none of those things, okay? This is beginning of each month, and on Shabbat, they had to do this. They have to perform community salah. Now, book of Ezra, verse number 5 of chapter 9, it says, at the evening sacrifice. So whenever you see the morning sacrifice and evening sacrifice, these are the community salah times in the Bible, in the Torah. At the evening sacrifice, it says, Kamti, I stood up. It means, Kamti means I stood up, my pondering, having torn my garments and robe, what did I do? Crouched. Yes, it says fell. It says I crouched on my knees and spread out my hands to Yahweh my God. So this is what Ezra is talking about. He standing up. So he first stood up, and it's the evening time. So he performs the salah. He recites the Torah. At the end of his salah, he comes to this position, and then he turns his hands towards the heaven, turns it upside down, as if the palm of the hand is upward. So that's what he's talking about. 1 Chronicle 29:20. This is a commandment of David to people, and said David to all the assembly that have gathered behind him. David is leading the prayer. Bareku, bless Yahweh. We saw that in Ezra, did the exact same thing, all of them. This is Bareku, is a command to start the salah, to start the prayer. That's what a bless Yahweh. So what did the community do behind him? So blessed all the assembly Yahweh God of their fathers, and Yik Edu, they bowed down, Vayishtahavu Yahweh bowed down and prostrated. They have translated correctly here. Do you see that? This is the first time. They translated that prostrated themselves before Yahweh. Up until now, the same translation was translated as worship, but suddenly it changed to prostration. These inconsistencies cause people not to understand what's going on. So they bowed down and prostrate. So they said their prayer at the end of their Salah, they bowed down and prostrated themselves. So remember that first day of the 7th month, fall equinox, equal day, equal night. Nehemiah chapter 8 verse 3 gives us again another snapshot picture of that day. It says Ezra, he read from it. From what? He read from the book of the Torah. He's going to tell us later in the verse. In the open square that was in front of the gate of the water. So it's telling us the location of it, where it was. And these are important because in future we're going to know the exact place where these events happened. But how long was it? From the light of the day. So from morning until midday. But remember, it's not the midday like noon. It's the mid-yom. It's technically mid-yom until mid-yom. Mid-yom, yom, remember, is 24 hour. So basically, this is right up until evening when it gets 12 hours. I mean, there's equal day, equal night, right? So 12 hours daytime, 12 hours nighttime. So basically, he recites the Torah in Salah, and we talked about other verses, right? So they're reciting in the Salah and they're prostrating. So he recites it. This process takes that entire day because it's the first day of Ramadan, it's the first day of Tishra. So they're only glorifying and praising and reciting the word of God in the community. So this takes for the entire almost 12 hours. This process of glorification, Salah, recitation, 12 hours. And again, it specifies at the end that it was the book of the Torah. Here it says the law, but it's a Torah, right? Very quickly, I also want to point out that you had to actually go every year to the house of Yahweh. You had to do a pilgrimage every year to the house of Yahweh. And what did you have to do in the temple, in the house of Yahweh? If it was Shiloh, if it was Petra, or if it was Jerusalem after it was built, Temple of Solomon was built, you had to go to perform the Salah and you had to offer sacrifices as well. And this verse actually clarifies it for us. And went up people of the city year after year, yearly, annually. Miyamim yamima, every year, annually, to do what? Lehish tahavot Velizboha, to prostrate and to sacrifice. You prostrate during the Salah. It's a very important part of it. Remember, when you say prostration, it pretty much summarizes everything. Because in order for you to prostrate, you have to stand up. You have to bow, you have to kneel, crouch, and prostrate. That's why prostration is an inclusive word that describes the process, right? And also to offer sacrifices to the Yahweh. And this is annual pilgrimage that people from all the cities had to go to the temple to do that. So let's summarize this together. This is a summary of everything that we have discussed, all these snapshots and pictures that we have looked at. This is Salah. So Salah has 2 units. So 2 units of Salah are these. You can call them Rak'ah, you can call them whatever. It's 2 units of Salah, right? These are the 2 units of Salah. And then there's another part that follows the Salah. It's not the Salah, but follows the Salah. In this part, you stand up. Now you don't need to be like polite like you were in the Salah. You could move, you could do things, but this you do glorification in this part, the last part. You do glorification, you do praise, you sing song loud, and you just praise Yahweh with all your heart, your happiness. You could move your hands. You don't have to stand per se like this. I just want to clarify that. So this is not the Salah. You could move around. You could sing song with the communities, pure joy, and then you do the prostration. So what happened in the Salah, the first 2 units? That is the Salah. The actual Salah, you actually have to stand very humbly, stand up. you do bowing down. This is yik edu. This is bowing down. And then you start kneeling. This is when you get to kneeling. And then you are crouching and you do prostration. As soon as that happens, then as soon as prostration is over, you stand up again. You see, you do the second unit. Just like I showed to you for Hezekiah, just like I showed to you from David, just like from Daniel, all of those. You stand up and you do the same process. At this point, Salah is over. There's no sitting. There's no sitting anywhere. There's no going down and coming back up. It's a continuous movement. Down, up, down, up. Now here, this is not Salah anymore. This is glorification. This is praise. This is giving thanks. This is not Salah. You don't need to be this polite. I didn't put any other pictures. I use the same pictures. But you can be actually moving. You can actually moving your hand because you're going to be loud. During Salah, you're not loud. You're meditating. You're murmuring. You're sing-songing. But during glorification, you're praising. You might be screaming. You might be yelling and praising the Lord from the bottom of your heart. So you do that at the end of that glorification, which is actually should take equal amount of time to your Salah. So equal, this is almost equal amount of time. At least that's how it was at the time of Ezra. So equal amount glorification, equal amount these 2 units as well. Then at the end, you do another prostration with all that process. My brothers and sisters who follow Christianity, if you are, please take this video to your priests, to your rabbi, take it to them. You should be doing this. You're missing out. You're disobeying Yahweh. You're disobeying the Torah. You're disobeying the command of the Bible. Take this to your priest. Your priests have no knowledge or understanding of this. You should be doing this in your churches, in your synagogues. You don't need a temple. You should be doing this in your houses if you are not going to your church. Every morning, every evening, and at nights. But at nights at your homes, at your houses, you have to do this as well. Why are you not doing this? Why have you abandoned the word of Yahweh? And then you claim that you follow the Torah and you follow the Bible. The same with Muslims, those who claim they are Muslims. You have corrupted this practice. You stand up, you bow halfway, you come back up, go down, do 2 prostration, then come back up, and then do 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, and haphazardly, without any guidance or nothing from the Lord. You have corrupted this. And Akbar is the devil, Lucifer, that you are unknowingly worshipping. So correct yourself. I'll put the link in these videos. Repent, my brothers and sisters, regardless of what your religion is, Christianity, Judaism, Islam right now. You need to repent. You need to come back to the words of your Creator, to the words of Yahweh, to the words of Allah. And you have to do these processes. You have to do this daily ritual. You have to perform your Salah. I will have each of these verses we talked about deserves a video of themselves. This is a long video, but I had to put them together. We are going to discuss each and every one of these verses in the separate videos as well. Peace and blessings to all of you.